Steven Spielberg, I find quite confused.
I think it's a privilege to call yourself and it's something that you have to earn.
I find him to be, unfortunately, not as good at remembering the time that we spent together.
But you saved Hollywood.
In a shocking twist that's bound to set Tinseltown on fire, Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts have just unleashed a bombshell that threatens to unravel the glittering facade of Hollywood's elite.
I think what Steven Spielberg did, and Scott Frank also, is he knows it's there.
And he talked more about his personal life. I know more about, him and his life.
For years, Steven Spielberg has been the golden boy of the film industry. But behind closed doors, it seems the director's star-studded reputation might be hiding some dark, scandalous truths.
Surprised when you saw all these accusations of in Hollywood?
Was I surprised? I wasn't.
Cruise and Roberts, longtime powerhouses in the industry, are now at the center of a storm, dropping explosive evidence that could change everything we thought we knew about Spielberg. So let's dive in. So Tom Cruise was absolutely glowing at the Oscars nominees luncheon last year, and it wasn't just from the spotlight. He was the toast of the event, with none other than Steven Spielberg, his former director and one-time buddy, singing his praises to the high heavens. Spielberg, who worked with Cruise on Minority Report and War of the Worlds, went all out, declaring that Cruise might have single-handedly saved Hollywood with the $1.48 billion juggernaut Top Gun Maverick. He even told Cruise, "You saved Hollywood's A."
But you saved Hollywood.
But here's the juicy twist. Spielberg and Cruise had been on the outs for nearly 20 years, and nobody's really talked about why. Enter industry insiders Kim Masters and Matthew Baloney, who recently spilled the tea on Masters' KRC-WFM radio show, The Business. Apparently, their falling out traces back to a rather dramatic chapter in Cruise's life around 2005. Back then, Cruise was head over heels for his new flame, Katie Holmes, and was also deep into his Scientology phase. His fervent promotion of both seemed to overshadow his movie duties, causing a serious rift with Spielberg. So while Cruise was busy championing his love life and his faith, he kinda left Spielberg and his film hanging.
It still just goes on and tells a great story. Yeah, it's incredible what's happening in the world today.
Fast forward to their reunion at the luncheon was nothing short of a Hollywood fairy tale. It's like they've turned the page and mended old wounds, proving that in Tinseltown, you never know when a dramatic plot twist might just be around the corner. So, remember that wild moment in May 2005 when Tom Cruise made headlines not for his movie, but for his dramatic couch-jumping stunt on Oprah's show? He was on a mission to show off his love for Katie Holmes, but it wasn't just the acrobatics that had everyone talking. Cruise, then a staunch advocate of Scientology, got into hot water for his outspoken views on psychiatry.
I've never agreed with psychiatry. There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. There's ways of vitamins.
Cruise didn't hold back when he criticized his friend Brooke Shields for using antidepressants to treat her postpartum depression. His Scientology beliefs had him at odds with psychiatric therapy, and he was quick to label it all as pseudoscience. The drama escalated when he had a fiery showdown with Matt Lauer on Today. Cruise came off as combative, dismissing psychiatry and ripping into Ritalin, a D used for ADHD, telling Lauer, "You don't even know what Ritalin is." It was like a verbal fireworks show that left many stunned. Despite Cruise's later attempt to mend fences with an apology to Shields and an invite to his 2006 fairy tale wedding in an Italian castle, the damage to his once gilded reputation had already been done. It was a scandal that stuck to him like glue and was a stark reminder of how quickly Hollywood glamour can get tangled up in controversy. There was a lot of negative publicity, Masters said. At the time, she reported that Spielberg believed that Cruise's antics had overshadowed the release of War of the Worlds and cost the film some $30 million in box office. "I'm not sure how he calculates that," Masters said. The film still ended up earning $603 million in worldwide box office. Page 6 revealed that Spielberg was absolutely livid with Tom Cruise, especially after learning that the director knew kids who actually benefited from Ritalin. But the real deal breaker? Spielberg, in what can only be described as a misstep, casually mentioned a doctor who prescribes the medication during a chat with Cruise. Little did he know, this doctor was also a friend of Spielberg's. Not long after this conversation, the doctor's office was swarmed by a picket line of Scientologists. Masters reported that despite Cruise's assurances he wasn't behind the protest, Spielberg was was fuming. The anger wasn't just his. Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's wife, was reportedly equally irate. As Masters detailed in a 2006 Slate article, the Spielbergs were left in the lurch, waiting for an explanation that never came. So while Cruise tried to smooth things over with an apology and a grandiose wedding invite, the damage from this high-profile spat lingered, casting a long shadow over their once-tight friendship. Despite their blockbuster hits with Minority Report and War of the Worlds, Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg never reunited for another project. Cruise continued to soar with his Mission Impossible franchise, but by 2011, Wired was declaring that no one takes Tom Cruise seriously anymore. The reasons? His intense Scientology devotion, his divorce from Katie Holmes, and his reportedly strained relationship with his daughter Suri. So this means that both have really some serious issues. And now with Julia Roberts' revelations, it is all making sense. Julia Roberts is making waves once more, reigniting her old feud with Steven Spielberg. The Pretty Woman star has thrown out some shocking claims that could stir up trouble for her longtime rival. Remember back in January when a court in Manhattan released that list of names connected to Jeffrey Epstein? Well, it's heating up again.
Newly released court documents relating to the Jeffrey Epstein. They include associates, friends, and alleged victims of the disgraced billionaire who died in jail 5 years ago.
Back then, rumors were buzzing that Steven Spielberg was on that list, along with a bunch of other big names. The internet was split. Some fans were shocked at the thought of Spielberg being involved in Epstein's scandals, while others thought he might not be entirely clean. The debates went on for days, but eventually faded away. That is, until recently, when Julia Roberts decided to stir things up again.
I know more about, him and his life and Amy Irving and what have you than I probably said about my own life.
Julia Roberts and Steven Spielberg have a history of not getting along. Their feud goes all the way back to the late 80s when they were working on the movie Hook. Spielberg had some harsh words about Roberts' behavior on set, saying she was unprofessional and struggled to follow directions. At the time, Roberts was dealing with a messy personal life, including her rocky relationship with co-star Kiefer Sutherland. They were engaged and set to marry right after filming Wrapped, but things went south when Roberts discovered Kiefer cheating, leading to the engagement being called off.
It wasn't what she wanted to do in the end. And I think it took a lot of courage, in amongst all of that other stuff, to be able to say, I can't do this.
Spielberg noticed that Roberts' rocky relationship with Kiefer was affecting her work attitude, and he didn't hold back in a 60 Minutes interview. It was not a great time for Julia and I to be working together, Spielberg admitted. Roberts was deeply hurt by Spielberg's comments. She had confided in him during the shoot and tried her best to stay professional, so his remarks felt like a betrayal. In a Vanity Fair interview, Roberts slammed Spielberg for not standing up for her against accusations of being difficult to work with. She called him a turncoat, saying, "I saw that, and my eyes popped out of my head. I couldn't believe that this person I trusted was hesitating to defend me." She even gave another interview where she accused Spielberg of having a vague and unreliable memory of what really happened on set back in the late 80s.
Steven Spielberg, I find quite confused in his recollection of me.
With their fiery history, it was only a matter of time before someone asked Julia Roberts what she thought about Steven Spielberg's name popping up on the Epstein list. Journalists, always hungry for juicy stories, jumped at the chance to get her take on the situation. And Roberts didn't hold back. When asked, she suggested that Spielberg might have some dark and unsettling interests that were even creepier than the stuff in his films.
I'm not even going to talk about Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is a...
Recently, some unsettling documents from the Indiana Jones filming days have resurfaced. In these pre-production meeting notes, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and Lawrence Kasdan are seen discussing the character of Indiana Jones, and the details are pretty alarming. The notes reveal a discussion about a young female character who falls in love with Indiana Jones. Lucas mentions, "I was thinking that this old guy could have been his mentor. He could have known this little girl when she was just a kid, had an affair with her when she was 11. Another participant chimes in, "And he was 42. Lucas adds, "He hasn't seen her in 12 years. Now she's 22. It's a real strange relationship." Then Spielberg makes a chilling comment, "She had better be older than 22. Lucas responds, "He's 35 and he knew her 10 years ago when he was 25 and she was only 12. It would be amusing to make her slightly younger at the time." The conversation between Spielberg, Lucas, and Kasdan took a troubling turn as they debated the young female character's age and her relationship with Indiana Jones. They discuss making the girl the one pursuing Jones rather than the other way around, and even toyed with the idea of increasing her age to around 15, but no older to keep the story edgy. They suggested that at 15, the character could have been more aggressively pursuing Jones, with the two characters engaging in their carnal desires. Fans were thoroughly disturbed when these details came to light, revealing just how problematic and unsettling the early discussions about the Indiana Jones character were. Like, seriously, who thought it was cool to make a young girl hook up with an older guy just to make the movie edgier? But hey, it's Hollywood, right? That place where all the shady stuff happens, where big shots use young, eager talents to satisfy their creepy cravings. It's messed up. When fans found out about this hair-raising detail from Indiana Jones, their reaction was something like this.
15-year-old in a relationship with a 27-year-old.
Some fans might chalk it up to just art, separate from the creators' real lives, and maybe that's true. But movies often reflect society, right? So it's possible that Spielberg and others' odd preferences seeped into their films. If you think Spielberg's interest in young characters was a one-off, think again. There's talk that during Jurassic Park, he got pretty close with Ariana Richards. Allegedly, he sent her caregiver away so they could be alone in her hotel room, supposedly to go over lines. Sources claim Spielberg then put Richards in uncomfortable and confusing situations. Unfortunately, that first night was just the start of a series of strange encounters, with Spielberg allegedly taking advantage of her. Richards reportedly has been in therapy for years and avoids discussing the movie or giving interviews. After Jurassic Park, she did a few more films, but then left Hollywood behind. Now she's a painter, and maybe that's been her way of finding peace and expressing herself after everything she went through.
I get really inspired to paint portraiture, I would say, is my very favorite thing.
Ariana Richards left acting to escape years of alleged mistreatment by industry gatekeepers who should have known better. One such figure was Roman Polanski, a Polish director who's also a friend of Spielberg's. Not to jump to conclusions, but there's that saying about birds of a feather, right? Polanski, like Spielberg, has a troubling history with accusations of inappropriate behavior toward young women. On March 10th, 1977, Roman Polanski, then 43, was arrested and charged in Los Angeles with multiple offenses involving Samantha Gailey, now Geimer, who was 13 at the time. The charges included unlawful S intercourse with a minor, R by use of D, perversion, sodomy, lewd and lascivious acts upon a child under 14, and furnishing a controlled substance to a minor. While Polanski initially pleaded not guilty to all charges, he later accepted a plea deal that led to the dismissal of the more serious charges in exchange for a guilty plea to engaging in unlawful S intercourse with a minor.
Yeah, when he wanted to get into jacuzzi, I knew I was in trouble. Like, wait, this is not what he's supposed to be doing.
After undergoing a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation and being placed on probation, Roman Polanski fled from justice in February 1978. He left the United States for England and subsequently France, just hours before his scheduled sentencing. Polanski has since resided mainly in France and has avoided traveling to countries where he might face extradition to the United States. According to Geimer's testimony to the grand jury, Polanski had asked Geimer's mother, a television actress and model, if he could photograph the girl as part of his work for the French edition of Vogue, which Polanski had been invited to guest edit. Her mother allowed a private photo shoot. Geimer testified that she felt uncomfortable during the first session, in which she posed topless at Polanski's request, and initially did not wish to take part in a second, but nevertheless agreed to another shoot. This took place at the home of actor Jack Nicholson in the Mulholland area of Los Angeles. When the crime was committed, Nicholson was on a ski trip in Colorado, and his live-in girlfriend Angelica Houston, who was there, had left, but later returned while Polanski and Geimer were there. Geimer was quoted in a later article as saying that Houston became suspicious of what was going on behind the closed bedroom door and began banging on it, but left when Polanski insisted they were finishing up the photo shoot. "We did photos with me drinking champagne," Geimer says. "Toward the end, it got a little scary and I realized he had other intentions and I knew I was not where I should be. I just didn't quite know how to get myself out of there." In a 2003 interview, she recalled that she began to feel uncomfortable after he asked her to lie down on a bed and described how she attempted to resist. "I said, no, I don't want to go in there. No, I don't want to do this. No, and then I didn't know what else to do," she stated, adding, "We were alone and I didn't know what else would happen if I made a scene. So I was just scared, and after giving some resistance, I figured, well, I guess I'll get to come home after this." Many fans aren't surprised by the later accusations against Spielberg, especially considering his ties to Polanski and the controversial pre-production meeting where they discussed a 15-year-old character being involved with an older man. Given that movies often reflect real life and directors directors might project their own fantasies into their work, it's not too far-fetched to connect these dots. Fans suspect that such behavior might have been more common among directors and executives back then. Stories like Thandie Newton's, where she revealed her experiences of being objectified on a casting couch, only reinforce this perception.
I found when I was a 16-year-old, fresh from boarding school, going out into, on the casting couch, I was definitely objectified to an extreme.
Thandie also disclosed that she was manipulated deliberately when she was young and joined the industry. The incident happened when her father went to another country and she was alone. She said, "I was 16 and a virgin. I'd been psychologically G over weeks. I didn't fight him off. I was almost paralyzed with fear. It was SA." During an interview, she recalled another incident which took place when she was auditioning at the studio for the second time. In the meantime, she was asked to be a part of an indecent activity.
And the director asked me to sit with my legs apart. The camera was right between, positioned where it could see up my skirt.
Thandie further disclosed that she was also asked to sit in a weird manner in which she was not comfortable, saying, "He asked me to put my leg over the arm of the chair and think about the character I was supposed to be having the dialogue with and how it felt to be made love to by this person. He was a director. I was still very young and thought it must be normal." Years later, when Thandie Newton encountered the same director at the Cannes Festival, she noticed him giving her a strange smile. This raised her suspicion, prompting her to investigate further. To her shock, she discovered that the director had been secretly recording audition tapes and showing them to others in his home. This revelation explained his peculiar behavior towards Thandie and shed light on an unsettling practice within the industry.
Used to show that video late at night to interested parties at his house.
Thandie Newton, known for her roles in Line of Duty and Westworld, has been an outspoken advocate for shedding light on the pervasive issues of violence and racism in the entertainment industry. Throughout her career, she has courageously spoken out about her own experiences and the pressure she faced to remain silent about them.
It's not about the person that's been It's not just their role to say enough. It's about the people around. How much are the people that witness, how much are they perpetrators of the crime?
During another interview with British Vogue, she has explained how these extremely violent incidents have changed her psychologically and physically as well. She said, "There's a moment where the ghost of me changed, and it was 16. He derailed me from myself utterly. I was traumatized. It was a kind of PTSD for sure. I was so distraught and appalled that a director had a young actress, and that it was happening elsewhere, minors getting A, and how F up it was. I was basically waiting for someone to come along and say, well, what shall we do about this?" Newton revealed that in the aftermath of her A, she struggled with eating disorders, resorting to controlling her food intake as a way to cope with the trauma. She said, "I punished my body to try and find my heart." It's crucial to note that while Spielberg hasn't been directly accused of mistreating Ariana Richards, there were allegations made by actor Crispin Glover in 2003. Glover, known for his role as George McFly in Back to the Future, claimed in his book and subsequent film, What Is It?, that Spielberg's interest in portraying young boys in compromising situations might hint at personal inclinations. Fans have speculated that directors might project their own fantasies in subtle ways through their movies, such as with the 1985 film. These discussions often bring up how themes in cinema can blur the lines between fiction and the creator's personal lives.
Oh my God!
Here, a boy seems to be reattaching the broken pecker of a statue to its original place with an expression that has suggestive undertones. Many fans questioned why, of all the places, it was the pecker of the statue that got broken. They wondered why these children would be subjected to these kinds of depictions when there were several ways to elicit laughter from the audience. So you see why Glover would have a problem with Spielberg's alleged obsession with portraying boys in funny ways. Check out his clip where one of the boys had the pecker in his mouth of all places after it had broken off the statue. It often takes a long time for victims to gather the courage to speak out against such acts, and by then, the perpetrators may be older and less powerful, having already caused significant harm. This is why figures like Ariana Grande and Jennifer Lawrence advocate for immediate steps to protect people working in Hollywood. Lawrence argues that if we can create safe environments for animals during filming, we should prioritize doing the same for humans in such potentially toxic environments. She believes it's crucial to prevent these cases from happening in the first place, rather than waiting and hoping they don't occur again in the future.
I mean, there's protections for animals, in filming. I think there need to be protections legally put in place to protect people when they're filming, a human being.
It's unfortunately common for victims to already feel burdened by guilt, and public stigmatization only exacerbates their suffering. This tends to occur more frequently when the perpetrator is a wealthy or prominent public figure. In some cases, perpetrators manipulate the narrative to portray victims as criminals seeking financial gain, which further skews public perception. Sadly, the public often believes these narratives and may rally to the defense of the A, dismissing or discrediting the victim's account. One person wrote, "Back in 1993, I had a friend who worked for then Universal and expressed his disdain for Steve Spielberg, calling him a P. He was extremely angry when he spoke about Spielberg. Of course, at the time, I had never heard anything pertaining to Spielberg and minor children." Another one added, "Mothers and fathers, talk to your sons and daughters. Save them from having to seek mental help later in their lives because of these things that call themselves respectful men and women. Please." Spielberg hasn't faced legal action for the allegations against him yet. While Hollywood insiders might whisper about it behind closed doors, no one has had the courage to take him to court. With his name on Epstein's list and the surrounding controversies, it feels like it's only a matter of time before someone steps up. It's crucial to protect children from elites who might exploit their innocence for harm. That's all for today. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.